Okay, so a little tardy to the party in this one, but I wanted to wait to listen to this with my partner as she is a huge Nightwish fan. So we just wanted to find the right time to listen to it. And now that we have, I can start talking about it. So let's dive into it. Human Nature by Nightwish. So Nightwish is a Swedish progressive metal, or I guess symphonic metal would probably be a better way to categorize these guys. They're kind of in the same vein as, say, like Camelot or Epica or Apocalyptica or any of those like very symphonic progressive metal bands. They have these really soaring pieces. It's a slowed down power metal. Now, that being said, I still really enjoyed a lot of their works. I still really love Dark Passion Play as well as Imaginarium. And Century Child was fine. Now, all of these albums had their original singer, or at least the singer that kind of put them on the map, which is Annette Olsen. Unfortunately, Annette Olsen left 2 albums ago, or I guess 1 album ago, depending on it. This is the second album without her. And some people are lukewarm to the new singer, Floor Jansen, and Floor does a pretty serviceable style. Now, I haven't heard the last album before this, which was Endless Forms Most Beautiful. I probably should, because what I hear here is very, very good. Like, Floor does a fantastic job of picking up where Annette kind of left off. Now, obviously, you don't have those really soaring operatic solo moments that Annette was bringing to the table, but you still have that very heartwarming, very personable and soaring vocals that Annette still brought to the table. So Floor is still able to kind of pick that up and run with it a little bit more. Like, if they were just pulling out the same material over and over and over again, I kind of get bored. So I'm glad to see that they're at least trying something different and new on these new couple of albums. And honestly, Human Nature really blew me out of the park. Like, this one really, really surprised me. The album itself is a double disc, and it's meant to be listened to in 2 distinct parts. You have Human, and then you have Nature. You have Human, which is this analytical, emotional, very traditional style for Nightwish. You have a lot of very heavy moments. The track itself opens up with music being the 7-minute odyssey of music. And there's a few points in music, and it's followed up in the 8th track of Tribal, that has this rhythm section very akin to Peter Gabriel's 4th album, like Rhythm of the Heat is probably the track that I'm thinking of, where the rhythm section and the percussion is so complex and it feels almost like an African tribal thing, and I guess that's where tribal comes from. But I really, really like it, and I like that they're using these different styles and these different feelings. It's a little bit more on the symphonic approach and less on the metal approach, at least within these couple of songs. Now, that's not to say that all of them are like that. Tribal, Pan, the 5th track, and Noise, the 2nd track, are very heavy. We still have that really driving guitar works, that metal aspect of the symphonic metal. We've got that chugging guitar where you've got that head banging aspect. Now, it never gets to the point of like blast beats, but for a symphonic metal, it gets pretty heavy at times. And I really particularly like that. I love how heavy it can get. And the other thing that I really like about these kinds of guys is like their gothic aspects. Like, that's where we're getting that symphonic wave from. And we get that with like Shoemaker and Harvest, where we have a lot of that keyboard styles. And you do have a number of tracks that do drip a little bit with cheese. Harvest and How's the Heart both do this. Harvest has that rhythm section that I was talking about a little bit with Tribal and the 1st track of Music. And it has something really fun in their rhythm section and their percussion, but oh boy, the music that's found around it is a little bit dripping in the cheese. It's a little bit of a nice fondue. And then we come into a track like Procession that kind of blends all the styles together. And Procession might be one of my favorite tracks from the 1st disc outside of Music. In being this really nice little melting pot of all those different flavors that we have. Now, it never gets over the top cheesy. It never gets over the top within this rhythm section, or the gothic, or the symphonic, or the metal. It blends them in a really nice flavor. And then we come into the final track of Endlessness. That, on the one hand, is a little bit of a generic Nightwish track. It has everything that we kind of want. Instead of Procession, which was kind of a blending of all the styles that we had before it, Endlessness is just kind of like a standard ending track off of the album. And what I really, really enjoy is that the first disc is a complete work. And that's what I really like. Like, I like the fact that Endlessness, even though it's a little bit on the generic side, still adds a perfect punctuation period at the end of the album. Like, I feel like after Endlessness, I've had my fill. That's a great sit down point of music. I'm good. I'm going to take a break and I'm going to do something else, right? Because then we get into Nature, the second track, or the second disc off of this, and each of these are basically all the works of nature which adorn the world. So if the first one was Human and it was much more analytical, emotional, like what is the human nature, you know, that's where it comes from. The second one is Nature, and Nature is this very beautiful, very abstract, natural kind of a soundscape. Like, this one is purely instrumental outside of a few spoken words from Vista and the last track. So the first track of Vista, last track of Anthropocene. All the other tracks are just purely instrumental, and I love this. Like, I love this concept, and I applaud Nightwish for trying something new and something so exciting like this. Now, it might just be because I've been listening to a lot of soundtracks from BBC nature documentaries, specifically Blue Planet 2 and Planet Earth 2. These sound like a much more metal version of those. Like, at no point do I ever really feel like any of these tracks are purely instrumental metal music. They feel much more like a soundtrack to nature, which is probably why it blends so well with those soundtracks I've been listening to. And each of these tracks, they fit so well with the subject matter that they're tackling. For example, Quiet as the Snow is so subdued. It's very airy. It's so light. It's cold, but it's warming. And the blue is this almost relentless cascading of water, and it's blended then with the green, which is this luscious, life-giving, very brilliant and colorful track. The Moors being such a haunting and dismal track. Like, each one is paired very well with the subject matter that they're going for. And I really, really love how they're able to pull off getting these emotions out without really providing any grounding for it outside of the title of the actual work itself. And so it's for that reason that it's like, if the first one is very emotional, this one is much more abstract. It's much more an impressionistic thing. It's very much like nature, but it's still beautiful, and there's still emotion to be found there. It's within those stories that is found within nature that brings it forth within that sense. And I know I kind of contradicted myself a little bit on that, but I just got to applaud Nightwish for trying something so new and it paying off so brilliantly. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. In the end, Human Nature is a really, really fantastic double album. But I don't necessarily know if this one's supposed to be an album to be listened to all at once. And I kind of love it. I love the fact that they tried something new. And as I mentioned, I think that it definitely succeeded in what they were trying to do. So, wrapping this whole thing up, my suggestion, this one is one that I would definitely pick up in physical format. Even though it's not necessarily my favorite type of metal, and not even my favorite type of symphonic metal, I think what they did on this album, it was experimental, and it paid off, and I loved it. They took a risk, and I gotta applaud it, because it definitely worked. I could see this not working, but it definitely worked. And at least it worked for me. But what did you guys think? Did you love this album? Did you hate this album? Because that's all I have to say about Human Nature by Nightwish. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.